My name is Beth Quarles. I am the April board member and facilitator of the call today. Thank you for joining us. It is each one, reach one, teach one. I want to mention a few housekeeping items before we get started today. First, when you scroll over the screen, a menu bar pops up. Depending on what device you are on, you can find that menu bar at the top or at the bottom of your screen. That is where you will find a closed caption for today's session. You can view the captioning by selecting the CC tab or the menu bar. Our ASL sign language interpreters, you can find the interpreters on the screen with the name Liz and Angela. If you are only able to see the speaker, make sure you are in a gallery view so you can see the interpreter and the presentation at the same time. You can find the option to change the view at the top of your screen under a tab for view. If you would like to see the interpreter larger, you can choose to pin them. You can go to the top right-hand corner of the interpreter square and select that. Will give you the option to pin. You can make them larger by the pinning and then select speaker view. If you have technical issues, please use the chat feature. You can find the word bubble in the same menu bar. Once that is selected, that will allow you to follow along with the chat or add in your comments. If you would like to turn the chat feature off, if you are using a screen reader, you can do that by pressing Alt+H. To ask any questions or make comments, you can also select the hand option on the menu bar that allows us to know you have a question. For those of you on the phone today or using a keystroke, we ask that you press *9 or Alt+Y on your keypad to raise your hand. We will then let you know when you can unmute. You can select the unmute option or Alt+A if using the keystrokes. Remember, if you join into the conversation, please keep all background noise down much as possible to allow us to hear you clearly. We also ask that you ask all your questions on the chat. We may not get to all of your questions, but we will be recording and your questions will be answered. Now, let me turn it over to William and Nina.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is William.
And I'm Nina.
And I'm going to share our screen. We prepared a PowerPoint presentation for you. Great. As Beth stated, the title of our presentation is Each One, Reach One, Teach One, Diversity and Inclusion in Community Outreach and SIL program.
Disability Link is the name of our Center for Independent Living. I'm Nina Coleman, the Disability Rights, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion ILS.
And I, again, I'm William J. Thomas, Youth and Diversity IL Lead Specialist.
We all have multiple identities within us. Everyone at the SIL, well, the SIL is run by and for people with disabilities. And I identify as a queer, outgoing social justice advocate. She, her, and sometimes they. I'm not worried about those pronouns. Ivory skin, very light skinned. I have medium length wavy auburn hair, glasses, and I have an invisible disability.
And I'm William Thomas. I was going to add sexy in front of dark brown, but they said I couldn't. So I will just read the script, and I will describe myself as dark brown, extroverted, personable African-American male, pronouns he, him, his, with short black curly hair, closely cropped goatee, and I also am a person with invisible disability.
We don't want to make assumptions about anyone's identity based upon physical appearances because of stereotypes or socially constructed norms. Gender, sexuality, race, age, ability, sex, national origin, or any of those populations. Everyone can self-identify themselves. Assumptions make out of you and me.
So the best thing to do is to use proper names or ask what pronouns that they would like to use as self-identification.
Some of you may have even seen some recent commercials about hiring where that's actually being done.
So why do we need to talk about this? The idea of diversity and inclusion. This definition was taken from CUNY, City University of New York, and it reads, the concept of diversity encompasses acceptance and respect. It means understanding that each individual is unique and recognizes our individual differences. These can be along the dimensions of race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, age, ability, religious beliefs, and political or other ideologies.
So there's diversity. Now, social inclusion is often conflated with that term, but social inclusion refers to the behaviors and social norms that ensure people feel welcome, ensuring all groups, irrespective of race or ethnicity, have a meaningful voice and can live prosperous lives. Not only is inclusivity crucial for diversity efforts to succeed, but creating an inclusive culture will prove beneficial for employee engagement. Inclusion equals access.
Really quick, guys. Hello. I'm actually going to stop if you could stop your screen share.
Sure.
It looks like your bandwidth isn't liking it. So I'm actually going to share it for you. I have it
Okay, thank you.
ready to go. Yep. Just give me 1 second. Maybe that will help the screen out a little bit. Is this where you all were?
Yes.
Perfect. All right.
Should
Yeah.
we go back over? Should we go back
No.
over that?
I think we saw it. I just wanted to make sure that it doesn't glitch out. So
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. So why do we need to talk about this? Continue. Many make the mistake of thinking diversity means inclusion and end up measuring the diversity side because it's easier to quantify while neglecting inclusion. And that was taken from People Management, an article of People Management on why we need to talk diversity and inclusion. Inclusion is a much broader construct and requires a change in the way people interact and the removal of obstacles. There is a connection between inclusion and motivation in the community and workplace. So if I can give you an example of diversity. So there's a red rose, a white rose, a yellow rose. That's diversity. But if I were to take all the red roses and put them in a vase, and if the yellow and the white rose could speak, how would they feel? You know, well, why wasn't I included in that array of flowers? So
Yeah,
yeah, all right.
for the kids.
Yeah. All right. Question.
Is there anyone who'd like to share an example of when they were included in something that caused you to be more motivated as a result?
And just as a reminder, you can drop those comments right into the chat if you'd like. And maybe if you want to repeat the question one more time.
Is there anyone who would like to share an example of when they were included in something that caused you to be more motivated as a result of being included?
I see one hand up. Maria said, sure. And then
Okay.
I'm going to allow Jake to talk to answer his question. Go ahead, Jake. You're good to unmute now.
Okay, my friends down at base, it's a summit program down in Missoula. They, even after they were allowed to keep meeting in person, they adopted a hybrid Zoom model so I could still participate in activities with them.
Awesome.
Excellent. We do that here at Disability Link also. We've opened our meetings to in person, but we do offer the Zoom as a hybrid so that people that are further away or have transportation issues can still be a part of it. Everybody's, usually the groups are peer led, so everybody's welcome to join in.
Awesome. And then there's in the
There's-
chat,
Oh,
Mallory was saying my first April conference in YLF. And then Becky, being included in the Silk motivated me to become a disability advocate and volunteer. And Maria also
Awesome.
said Center for the Blind in Anchorage did that. Mostly though, it's been social groups online that use the right pronouns when I used to use they, them, which hasn't been a thing for a while now. When it was, the people who supported it were wonderful about it. And Lisa Brown
Excellent.
also stated, when I started working at our SIL in Casper, Wyoming, I finally felt at home with the staff and management team being included and accepted. And then we have Sandra. Did you want to take one more?
Yes.
Sure.
Oh, it looks like Sandra dropped hers in the chat. Okay,
Okay.
same as Becky. Have been a Silk member in Delaware since last couple of months. Opened a new world of advocacy for me.
Awesome.
Next slide.
Next slide. So let's talk about this. So we're going to ask you a couple of questions. Those were great responses. Is there anyone who would like to share an example of when they were included in something? Or, I'm sorry.
Well, we already
We
did that one.
question. The next question is, well, does anyone want to share an example of when they were excluded from participating in the community? So therefore, we were discouraged and reluctant to try again. That's going to be a good one. Again, does anyone want to share an example of when they were excluded from participating in the community? So therefore, were discouraged and reluctant to try again.
Okay, Maria.
Maria says, sure.
Okay.
Maria, would you like to unmute and tell us?
All right, Maria, you are unmuted if you are allowed to unmute if you'd like.
Oh, I think it says.
There you go, Maria, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Okay, I must be facing the wrong microphone. When I was trying to get my identity as multiple recognized by the school, they informally behavior planned me and wouldn't change it no matter what was told to them. And I just got discouraged after a while from even trying to do anything beyond just doing my work and getting the heck out.
Wow.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
So
then-
many factors, yeah. I was just gonna say that in the community, they're just like in a SIL, they're all ages and everything. Ages and life experiences, and cultural change goes faster than broader societal change, which goes faster than laws, which is, I may be getting ahead of myself right now. None of us ever thought that we would see gay marriage be legal in the whole United States, but it is now. So, you know, that's why they talk about being on the right side of history, because history comes after the legal. It's like the last thing. I wanted to give one little example that happened recently here at Disability Link. We had a consumer that has been very active advocating and working on a political campaign for someone as a volunteer, working very hard and very diligently. But then there was a volunteer appreciation luncheon scheduled. And when our consumer got to that luncheon, it was not wheelchair accessible. So she could not participate. And that was where she was just angered, and she was not motivated to work for that candidate anymore. But she did come to and participate in our National Disability Voter Registration Week here at the Disability Link Center in person. We had it on Zoom as well. And we offered her ideas on how to advocate for herself and things like that. So that's just my little example. I'm sure you all have some better ones, or we can go on to the next question.
Would anybody else like to share?
We have a share. Anytime fun events happen and they are inaccessible, it makes me not want to go. Being deaf, the lack of interpreters at events is frustrating.
Yes.
The next one, Mrs. Brown. Our community does an art walks during the summer. However, having a physical disability, the sidewalks and streets are blocked off, making it difficult to move around and enjoy the event.
Yes.
The next, in group projects, some students didn't want to work with me because of my autism diagnosis. I don't necessarily think this has made me reluctant to try again. It just made me preserved and push through.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I did see a little earlier than that, though, something about COVID making it harder. Did you see that one?
Yes,
You
during
realize-
COVID, everything, comma, so don't even try to do community things anymore.
They may have meant everything shut down. I'm not sure.
Well, it can also be like a fear.
Yeah.
And that's why we try to, here at Disability Link, like I said, we'll have in-person meetings, but we'll also do the hybrid online meetings on Zoom and with the captioning and everything that we have available. But it really is, a lot of people are afraid to go out. But then on the other end of the spectrum, we have people who are tired of Zoom. So we're still spacing out here, and we're still having vaccination drives, and we have the most diverse work environment I've ever been in or seen in my life. It's like Disability Link is more diverse than Georgia State University.
I agree.
So let's go to the next slide. Why is this important? Why diversity matters. It has become more apparent that having diverse people and teams in the workplace creates a better atmosphere in the community and workplace. By developing and implementing strategies to include a more diverse and inclusive environment, it will attract more people, create a welcoming environment, and spark creativity and empathy. Inclusive environments seek out and value individual perspectives, create a sense of belonging, and build deep alignment on a clear objective. So I just want to say here that this is a great, diverse, inclusive work environment
Yes.
here at Disability Link. And I love all the different shared experiences because everybody is working to do good, but then they're empathetic and heartfelt and generous for the most part.
Next slide, please. How do we utilize this information in our SIL? Disability Link uses this information to encourage our consumers to participate in the following. We have Rev Up Georgia and Grassroots Connectors, which seeks to bring together disability rights advocates to mobilize the community with information around voting and issues that affect them. We have the American Association of People with Disabilities, the AAPD summer internship program. And we do to give individuals with disabilities opportunities to hold meaningful internships that they're often excluded from because of their disability.
And we have our monthly NAUWU meeting that stands for Nothing About Us Without Us. It's a common disability rights hashtag and slogan, meaning make no decisions about us without us having a seat and a voice at the table. Our meeting is peer support for disability rights advocates, and we must remain nonpartisan. So we just inform people about the issues that are important. We can educate them. And also we make calls to action on these issues that affect everyone, but especially the cross-disability community. And during these meetings, we try to have speakers or show videos, and we do focus a lot on voting because like John Lewis said, the great John Lewis, freedom fighter, he said that the vote is the most powerful nonviolent tool that we have in a democracy. And as the facilitator to the Nothing About Us Without Us group, I would also say that the Rev Up Georgia and Grassroots Connectors are Zoom meetings that bring together disability rights advocates around, yes, voting and other issues. And we try to build bigger coalitions because there's more strength in numbers. We can, like it says in the next thing coming, advocacy days, trainings on legislative contacts and Georgia Capitol visits about housing, education, transportation, healthcare. All these issues are important to everyone, but the way the problems are with these things, as far as money and funding and budgeting, it's just, some people are more affected. For example, the voting laws that were just passed this past spring, they disproportionately affect people of color and people with disabilities because of things like transportation and economic status. And what I was gonna say lastly about the Nothing About Us meeting and hooking that up with the Rev Up Georgia and Grassroots, as a disability rights, diversity and equity specialist here at Disability Link, what I try to do is give all the consumers that I come in contact with the same information. I'm always walking around saying, are you registered to vote? Have you moved lately? Do you know who your state representatives are? And when we have these meetings, I tend to get their email and send them back links and information so that they can have that at their fingertips and disposal, but also what the title of our program, Each One, Reach One, Teach One, just like grabbing two people with you, making sure you have a plan to vote and go together. I say, hey, if you're coming to our LGBTQ plus disability meeting, bring two peers with you. Same thing to the Nothing About Us Without Us or anything that we have going on. Because peer support, bringing someone with you is peer support and advocacy in action.
Okay, I'm gonna take over. So the virtual and live programs, our still offers in-person services, as Nina was stating, and also digital platforms as well. Let's move to the next slide. Diversity and inclusion in practice. LGBTQIAP+ disability. This group is designed for those at the intersection of LGBTQIAP++ and disability. We focus on public policy discussions and advocacy, inclusive community in the LGBTQIAP spaces, and group social outings. Disability Link received a Pride in Action grant to further the cause of outreach and participation in the continuing work for equity in the workplace and greater community for its LGBTQIAP++ disability demographic. Those identifying as LGBTQIAP and or with a disability may be invisible to, or further stigmatized by the greater population. For these reasons, our SIL relies upon participation in community partnerships, networking with other agencies, and sharing information on social media platforms to grow membership. Our group offers a safe space for sharing and peer support across the disability and sexuality spectrum.
This is Nina again. I would just like to say here that it's actually statistically shown that LGBTQ++ individuals are even more likely to have a disability than the general population. And we do know that over 20% of the general population has a disability. So this intersection, having both of these things is not unusual, but it's hard to find because of the visible versus invisible identity status, whether it's a sexual orientation or whether it's your disability, because you might be able to see that someone's in a wheelchair, but not that they have lupus and that it took them 6 hours to get ready to come see you for a 1 hour meeting. And there's also still the stigma. It's kind of invisible, the mental illness stigma. That's invisible. It also is one of these things that's kind of like, if they don't ask, I'm not going to tell. I was just reading yesterday that 78% of the people with disabilities do not disclose that in a job interview. So, I mean, people need to be free to be able to have every single part of their identities not just accepted and tolerated, but embraced.
Another group we have, or another example of diversity and inclusion in practice, is our Us Protecting Us group. This peer-led group actively works on different responses to issues dealing with first responders and law officers. The group created and continues to improve upon a crisis response workshop to educate police and the community on how to prepare for and respond to potentially dangerous yet non-criminal situations such as mental illness and substance abuse, problems only exacerbated by the criminal justice system. In addition, this group provides guidance to different areas for policy on inclusive language. Next slide, please. Data sharing, population we serve. There was just so much information that we would have had to include here. So what Nina and I did was we narrowed it down. Nina, you want to speak to that?
No, I'll speak to it.
Okay. So we talked about accessibility with broadband, rural versus urban, and how it's not as accessible in a rural area than it is in an urban area. And then within the rural area, there's a subset there where if you're a person of color, you have lesser access to broadband than, let's say, the white counterparts. That's due to affordability, accessibility, availability, all of those factors. In addition, we talked about how the transportation differs in those areas. It stated that 24 million, we took this from the United States Census, 24 million people lack access to high-speed internet. And we know that 20% of that population have a disability. And then there's another percentage that might identify as LGBTQIAP.
Yes, which, as we stated earlier, have an even higher percentage of having a disability,
Disability.
more so for the women than the men. But yet we see a lot of disparities in services being available, especially, I'll read what it says here: compare and contrasting socioeconomic statuses, disability benefits, housing statistics, and availability of social programs. And featuring that Georgia is one of the states that chose not to expand Medicare benefits, as opposed to the Northeast and West Coast. We get a lot of calls here at Disability Link, most of them about affordable housing. And this is not the easiest state to get benefits in, or to find a place to live that's affordable. And unless you're right in Metro Atlanta, transportation isn't the best either. But we'll move on with that, move on from that. Unless anyone has.
And there are many causal, there are many factors that go into that. We don't have enough time to go into that. But that's something for the next time.
We have a question
Sure.
from an anonymous attendee. Hi, I was wondering how one should prioritize support when dealing with multiple diagnoses and are a member of the LGBTQIAP+ community.
Well, I would suggest that you find a center for independent living closest to you and become a consumer, and hopefully that still will have a group like we do that is at the intersection of a peer support group, LGBTQ+ disability. If not, it might be good to join someone else's that already exists, like the one we have at Disability Link, or start one. Get some peers together and start one, because it does take a village to get these benefits, no matter what your diagnosis is, or how many you have, or what your orientation is, or what your gender identity is, but that can actually make it much worse. So when you can find an ally, keep that ally. And I don't want to be a commercial for Disability Links LGBTQIA P plus disability group every third Wednesday at 5:30, but there it is.
And we can share that information. If you can't join in person, we do host it also virtually. You can go to the next slide. Okay, this is where we open it up for you to participate. What would the program look like? Based on what you heard us say, based on what your experiences are, what would the program look like? Does anyone want to share?
How you might reach out to people in rural areas or people of different ages, races, gender identities, etc.
We have, Michael's line is open now.
Hey, thank you for presenting. This has meant a lot of help. I work at Summit Independent Living Center in Missoula, Montana, and we have a program that we've had the last 6 years called BASE. I think Jake mentioned it earlier. And something that we've really tried to focus on is creating community based on interest and not necessarily label. So being an independent living center, we obviously have an emphasis on disability with all of our programs and, you know, as high a level of accessibility as possible. But when it comes to programs like an improv class or a yoga class, really opening that up to the entire community, whether it be people with disabilities or not, so that you have individuals with or without disabilities sharing the same space because they have the same interests, and not just sharing a similar space because they identify with disability. I think that for our programming has really infused a lot of inclusion and fun and kind of a welcoming spirit. So
Awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much, because allies, we have allies everywhere in our community, and there's strength in numbers.
And then you
Anyone
have
else?
the NWCCI Summit. You're allowed to talk to. Go ahead.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. So what we have here in Summit County is something called Building Hope. And it has more to do with mental health, but that doesn't mean that they won't help you figure out something if you have some sort of disability. But what they do is basically they have all sorts of things, from learning how to weld, learning how to blow glass, just fun arts and crafts stuff for anybody, young, old, and obviously they don't discriminate. So I go there a lot. I'm in a wheelchair. Sometimes my hands don't work that well. They will offer any accommodation to me, whether it be a big enough space for me in my wheelchair, or the person who's actually hosting the event, they will actually help me if I need it.
Awesome.
So
And that was called Building Hope.
Yep, Building Hope. And it's always great to find little things like that, because it's here in our community that they basically will blast it out everywhere in the community, and whoever shows up, shows up.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And I just wanted to respond a little bit where you said it's mostly for mental health, but then also for people with other disabilities or people in the community. I actually run up against in some of these other groups where we're building coalitions, where you know how different activists or everybody can be like a one issue voter kind of thing. It's great that there are organizations just for the blind, just for mental health, just for spina bifida, but there's strength when we all come together. And I think that education has to do so much about it, because even I've met some disability rights advocates in the past year who do not see mental illness as a disability, or have said things. I'm not going to get all into microaggressions, but I can say some of the things like, you wouldn't say to me, William, you gays. Or you wouldn't say, what, I have some friends who are white. I have some friends who are gay. I mean, just these little things. It's not coming out clearly, but I bet you guys get my groove.
Anyone else? One more?
One more. We have this from Jake Morris. It says community boards are a good way to spread the word.
Awesome, yes. And we
Let's
thank
move
you
forward.
for. Okay.
We need to move forward and get our
Yeah,
quotes in.
yeah. So we're thankful that you're sharing and it's interactive because we learn from you. And these were some awesome things that you share with us that you're doing. Can we move to the next slide? Nina's pushing me. How can we do a better job of serving everyone with more equity? Anyone want to share how we can do a better job of serving everyone with more equity?
Seems kind of like a congruent with the answers we got on the
Yeah.
last question, yes? Okay. We'll go to the next slide.
So we want to share with you a few quotes. This first one was coined by Albert Einstein. And I see something in the chat now, not to discriminate against us if we want to go to school or get a job. Awesome, thank you, Kayla. And Albert Einstein coined this quote: "We must not only learn to tolerate our differences, we must welcome them as the richness and diversity which can lead to true intelligence."
All right, and the next slide just builds on that. It's by Dr. Maya Angelou. "We all should know that diversity makes for a rich tapestry, and we must understand that all of the threads of the tapestry are equal in value, no matter what their color." That last thing about not being discriminated for jobs, and that is so important because we do have programs at every SIL to assist in preparing people for work for at whatever level that they may need to be met at. And I was just speaking with someone the other day about how it's doubly stigmatic if you have a disability and you are LGBTQ plus. If you are, I guess, obviously stereotypically or read that way, you can be doubly stigmatized in seeking work, especially in Georgia, a right to work state. The ADA laws do count for us, but they only go so far.
Can we go to the next slide? Oh. Sharing personal experience and resources to inspire peers. Our stories are our superpower when we share them with others. Offering empathy and support to others rewards everyone involved. Peers across the disability spectrum benefit from sharing strength, experiences, empathy, and encouragement.
Before we ask everybody to answer the questions, I want to say one more thing, a couple things that Disability Link does. We offer peer support in all of our programs, but something we haven't mentioned is the Respect Institute is a training that you can get from Georgia Mental Health Consumer Network, in which you are taught to hone your own personal story of recovery in a way to tell it and encourage and inspire others to do the same, no matter what they've been through. So Disability Link does host the Respect Institute meetings quarterly. And we do have many members of our board and also our consumers that have taken that training as well. So with that,
Question 1, what does peer support mean to you? Would anybody like to share? What does peer support mean to you? Chris.
excellent.
Chris, I have set up a peer support meeting for my high school consumers, and I have been such an improvement in moral and self-advocacy.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Anyone else?
And I see Jake's hand is up. Well,
Okay.
do you want to go ahead?
Peer support to me means having support from someone who's lived the same experience as you. It's a lot easier to give someone advice on their circumstances if they share circumstances, whereas it feels a little less genuine when someone who hasn't lived the same experience as you tries to give you advice on how to deal with it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing.
Jacqueline, having someone who believes in you without having to completely understand you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jack.
And Michael, you can unmute now.
Cool. This is a great question. I think I've been involved with independent living since 2001. And I think the answer to this has really evolved for me personally. And I think looking at centers and kind of the direction they're heading. I think when I started, peer support was very much like a disability to disability match kind of system. So, oh, you have, this diagnosis. We know somebody slightly older than you that has the same diagnosis. Why don't you sit down and have coffee? And I think sometimes I was successful, but more often than not, it was putting people together based on diagnosis. And I think Jake put it really nicely, instead of experience. So the diagnosis might be a part of that. But if, creating community is more based on like your other experiences. So not necessarily linking it to diagnosis, but passion and interest and perspective, I think, is a direction I see peer support going in compared to where I saw it when I started.
Thank you so much for sharing. All of you, thank you. Many of you have answered the next question, which is why peer support is important to you, in your response to the first question. But I still want to ask the question if there's anyone else that wants to share. Why is peer support important to you?
We have one, somebody that believes in you,
Mhm.
encouraging you when you feel discouraged, somebody standing in your corner cheering you on. And the next is Wendy. At the most basic level, peer support in friendship, acceptance, understanding each other.
Awesome.
And there's Madison is also, you can unmute and join.
Hi, yeah, I'm also actually from Summit Independent Living in Missoula, Montana. There seems to be a lot of us here. So for myself, it's really important to have peer support. My best experience to speak on that was I'm diagnosed with OCD and anxiety, and a lot of people think that, that's one thing, like obsessed with germs and blah, 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 but it's so much more and beyond and deeper than that. And until I realized that my cousin also was diagnosed and had very similar experiences, it felt kind of like a little bit like I was alone, because so many people thought one thing of it, and then I didn't have that. It was just kind of like, oh, no one's ever going to understand me. And then I realized my cousin did, and we could bond even closer and have someone who knew the other's experience. So that was really important.
I too share that disability, so I can say I understand you as well.
It's a very stigmatized sort of mental thing, and it's unfortunate because it, at least in my experience, it's nothing like they say in the movies and the books and everything like that. So it's good to have somebody who knows what it truly is. So you guys, you can connect on that and support each other.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
And Rob states, validates that you are not alone. Gavin states, what I can't do by myself, I can do with another person because I am not good at everything, but everyone is good at some things. And together we can do anything.
I like that.
I like that.
I'm gonna steal that. I
And
like that.
Tara, peer support is important to me because I understand what others are going through, and we mutually respect and honor each other in the group.
Wow.
And it also is good to have what you're experiencing look at things from the same level. Peers see things differently many times than providers and others, and there is rarely stigma among peers.
So true. Awesome.
And this,
So, go ahead.
it is good to have what you're experiencing look at things from the same level. Peers see things differently many times than providers, others, and there is rarely a stigma among peers. I'm sorry, that was repeated.
Awesome.
I would like to say, this is Nina again. The last thing on the page, please share satisfying instances of giving and or receiving peer support. And I just had something, it's actually, peer support is like my favorite part of working at a SIL. And also what was already said about being partnered up with consumers and specialists that don't have the same exact diagnoses, but can still offer each other experience and support is great. Because I had an event last weekend and I have one consumer that's on the spectrum with severe challenges with social anxiety and with noises and things like that, but does call me for support, email me for support, and I feel honored to be shared with. But also, this person came out with their father and showed up, even though it was like the hardest thing in the world, just to meet me. So I'm so honored, and to me, that is like a major win, success story as far as working at a SIL and doing good. I'm sure you have some better ones to share if we have time.
We have one from Susan. Yes, I have been a peer support for 8 years, starting out in substance abuse and now in the disability community. Not everyone I offer PS to have had the same experience diagnosis as I have, but I think having lived, experienced, and overcoming challenges, coming out of the fire creates an empathy that is essential in PS.
Awesome. Some good stuff. Thank you all for sharing. Let's see, we have more.
We have one more.
Okay.
Answer to the last question. I was told by a teacher in high school I couldn't get in college, let alone be a sign language interpreter. but I had support and I applied at college to get my degree in sign language, and I got accepted into college.
Awesome.
Well, our next slide, it just says questions. So could we perhaps stop the screen share so that we can see you while we